It was a disappointing debut for Desmond Ridder, but did the Falcons fail in setting him up for success in their 21-18 loss to the Saints in Week 15?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. Sirius Black, and a.k.a. your very humble host of this illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They're helping you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. So today we are giving you my rapid reaction to the Falcons Week 15 loss to the Saints by a score of 21-18. A disappointing debut for Desmond Ridder, but if I was just going to sort of sum up this game with a quick game summary, basically the Falcons fell into a hole in part both to the struggles of the defense early in the game as well as Ridder looking particularly shaky. You know, they fell into a 14-0 hole in the first 7 minutes. They did have a chance. They did battle their way back as they often have done this year. And they had a chance to, continue on a go-ahead scoring drive at late in the fourth quarter. They were successfully able to convert or at least Ridder was able to hit Drake London on a 4th and 5 with about 2 minutes to go. But then London, after the catch, was stripped by Saints safety Justin Evans. Cornerback Bradley Roby recovered the ball at the Saints 35-yard line. The Falcons did get another 4th down stop against the Saints with like 9 seconds to go, but it was too little too late at that point in time. So let's talk about Desmond Ridder's disappointing debut. If we're looking at the pros of this performance, you did see the rapport between Desmond Ridder and Drake London looking particularly strong. London finished this game with 7 catches for 70 yards on 11 targets. The other pro from this game was the fact that Desmond Ridder was throwing with more rhythm and timing within the confines of the offense than we had seen previously with Marcus Mariota at the helm. But in addition to those pros, you saw some cons on similar plays, right? Ridder really didn't have any other connection to any receiver in this game other than Drake London. You sort of take away the 11 targets to London in Ridder's performance, and he finishes the game 6 for 15 for 27 yards passing, right? Even with London's production, his passer rating was like 59. You take it away, it's like a 48. So overall, a bad performance, and it did feel like he was kind of forcing the ball to London in a lot of situations, and that led to some potentially turnover-worthy type of throws, some off-target throws. That was another factor with you talking about the improved timing and rhythm. The ball was coming out much quicker with Desmond Ridder at the helm, but sometimes that was leading him to throw to some questionable spots. And there was a couple of times where Saints defenders were in a position to potentially snag some interceptions, but they were not able to haul him. Alante Taylor had like 4 pass breakups in this game. One of them was a potential interception on a questionable decision from Ridder trying to throw the ball to London late on the sideline. And, Taylor did snag the ball, but he didn't get both feet down in bounds while he was kind of bobbling the ball. And so that came off the board in that situation. But, going beyond Desmond Ridder's performance, it was very clear early in this game, especially with Ridder getting off to that slow start, that the Falcons were really struggling to get separation in this game. And, we'll see what the all 22 says. And this goes back to a complaint I had about the Arthur Smith offense a year ago where, receivers in this offense basically run 3 routes, digs, crossers, and fades. And you saw a lot of that in this game. It's kind of hard for receivers to separate on those types of routes. And so this was not exclusive to this game. This was an issue that sprung up when Mariota was at the helm. But, we were forgiving of it because we weren't really expecting the quarterback at that time to sort of carry the offense, right? Now, we're not expecting Ridder to be able to do that right now, but in a world where Desmond Ridder is successfully developed, we would like to see him carry a little bit more of that burden of, this offense and having a truly balanced attack on offense. And you're going to need more out of your weapons, getting open, for your quarterback to be able to do that. And again, this is not exclusive to this game, because I know PFF put out a graphic earlier this week looking at all the different starting quarterbacks and their sort of expected points added, their EPA, in terms of different coverage looks, and Mario's EPA against cover one man coverage was basically nothing. He was basically did nothing positive in that. And so, as I said, when we're talking about rebuilding this team, and again, sometimes we forget that this team is at the beginning of a rebuild. You're going to need weapons that can separate, and it clearly, obviously, Kyle Pitts is not there, so we're hoping to get more out of that. But outside of Drake London, there was just not a lot of separation in this game. And again, I'm sure plenty of people like, we got bigger fish to fry, and that's fair. I think that's fair. But, getting more weapons in this offense, getting guys that can get open in some of these situations, again, may not be the biggest priority that the Falcons need to address this offseason, but it is certainly a need. And I think this game certainly illustrates it. But, I think when we talk about the bigger fish that the Falcons need to fry, you probably look at the defense and the hole that the Falcons fell into early in this game. It certainly doesn't help your rookie sort of ease his way into the game when you fall into a 14-0 hole. The Saints got off to, were able to get to 14-0 faster than the Bengals were. And that's something that should not happen, especially against this Saints offense, right? It's understandable against the Bengals offense, but, it's not acceptable against this Saints offense. And certainly, again, we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about Ridder's performance, in part due to the fact that I want to reserve judgment in terms of looking at the all 22, which I'll get to on Tuesday. But overall, he definitely looked like a rookie quarterback, and we'll explore, that as the week goes on more in depth. But as I said, I don't think he was necessarily set up for success in this game, particularly due to some questionable defensive performance early in the game. And you can look at some play calling in this game, and we'll get into that later in the episode. And again, I know the comments are going crazy, being like, "Oh, Aaron, you're a hypocrite. You were so critical of Marcus Mariota, and you're not even, spending much time talking about Desmond Ridder." You're right. If that makes me a hypocrite, then so be it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and kill a rookie for looking like a rookie in his first NFL start. Did I expect him to look as bad as he did in this game? No. I'll take that L, guys, right? I absolutely wanted him to be better. I'm sure many of you guys out there wanted him to be better. And if you weren't rooting for him to succeed, I got some questions for you about, what are you doing with your life if you consider yourself a Falcon fan? But I'm not going to kill a rookie for looking like a rookie, right? And it goes back to the conversation we were having 6 months ago when we were talking about this team being a rebuilding team. Are they sort of set up for the success not only of Desmond Ridder, but also of any young quarterback that they're going to try to bring in here and to develop? And today's game did not look like a team that was set up for success, given some of the other issues in addition to the quarterback struggles. Moving on, if you're not going to play, acceptable defense early in games, if you're going to have questionable play calling, if you're not going to have, receivers that can separate, I don't care who that quarterback is, whether it's, Justin Herbert or Desmond Ridder, that guy's not going to be in a position to succeed. And so the only thing that really went well for the Falcons is the same thing that's gone well for the Falcons throughout the season, which is their running game. Tyler Allgeier balled out today. He was absolutely reading the tweets about Bijan Robinson, the Falcons taking Bijan Robinson. And, at this point, if this is how he's going to respond to the tweets, I'm going to keep tweeting about the Falcons taking Bijan Robinson, because he was balling out today. He had 139 yards rushing. I'm pretty sure that's a career high, season high for him. It was a season high for the Falcons offense, running game overall, with 231 yards rushing this week. So we'll continue to, we'll continue to throw shade at Tyler Allgeier on this podcast if we got to, if he's going to keep responding like this. He was absolutely incredible after contact in this game, and had a number of big runs in this game that really, kept this team in the game. CP got off to a slower start. He did finish much stronger in this game. So that's something that is not a new revelation, but we need to get more from this team, from the quarterback, from the weapons, from the defense, from the play caller, all that and more. If this team is going to be more than what they have been this year, which is a competitive, run heavy team. We'll see if they can, pull that off, and we'll talk about that, as the weeks develop. But, talking about the rest of this episode here, we're going to talk about the defense. And we're going to talk about, whether or not their defensive struggles in this game were due to the fact that they were missing DMPs, who, went to the hospital in this game. And don't worry, if you didn't hear the news, he's fine. And we'll get into sort of if those early defensive struggles was just basically due to the shock of not having their defensive coordinator, calling the plays on defense. And we'll get into that as we continue today's episode, guys. But before we get there, I want to tell you about our sponsor, BetterHelp. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp Therapy Online. I actually linked up with BetterHelp this summer. I've had several sessions with my therapist. And the great thing about BetterHelp Online Therapy is they're going to assess your needs and they're going to hook you up with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours after you sign up. And I know for me, when I picked my therapist, I wanted a person of color, and BetterHelp was able to provide a great list of options for that. The thing about BetterHelp is it's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. You can log on at any time and send a message to your therapist. You can do weekly video sessions, chat sessions. You can do group therapy sessions. A big reason why I signed up with BetterHelp is because it's a lot more affordable than traditional offline therapy. That was something that was stalling for me from getting into therapy. But now I look at it as a affordable way to invest in myself. And if you're looking to make a similar investment, get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. And guys, given that the Falcons are looking for a quarterback change and looking for other help elsewhere, maybe they're looking for the right people to make their team run better. And if you're looking for the right people that's going to make your small business run better, LinkedIn Jobs is the place for you to go. They're going to make it easier for you to find the right people that you want to talk to faster and for free. You can create a free job post in minutes at LinkedIn Jobs to reach the world's largest professional network of over 800 million people. They'll give you the simple tools like screening questions so you can find the right people with the right skills, the right experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you want to hire. And it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster and for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And so, guys, I thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen each and every day. And of course, in addition to making Locked On Falcons your first listen, check out Locked On Sports Atlanta. That's also the place on YouTube for the Locked On Falcons postcast, where myself and Jarvis Davis are coming at you live minutes after the game on Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Locked On Sports Atlanta is your second listen. Your first listen, on Sundays, and your second listen, any other day after the week when you're checking out Locked On Falcons, is the home to 3 shows that are breaking down not only local sports, but national sports. You got A to Z with Mark Zeno, Hitting Hard with John Chuckery, and ATL Day Ones with Jarvis Davis and Tanitra Batiste. And Locked On Sports Atlanta is also free and available on all the same podcast platforms that you're currently listening to or watching Locked On Falcons. And it's also free and available on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Just download the Locked On Sports Atlanta app if you have Roku or Amazon Fire TV. So, guys, let's talk about the defense. And again, as I said earlier, it was a slow start for the defense. They did respond. They did play better in the fourth quarter. If you're giving a summary of the defense, they were terrible in the first quarter. They responded in the second quarter, played fine. Third quarter, they only had one drive, but they gave a very long drive in that. So again, not great in there. And in the fourth quarter, they were pretty good. The question is, did they get off to that slow start because Dean Pease was not there? And so if you didn't hear, Dean Pease got carted off during pregame warmups when a Saints player collided with him while that player was fielding punts. He did go to the hospital. He was released sometime, I think, in the third quarter, and, is healthy and ready to go back to Atlanta. I think he did return to the stadium to check in with the team. But that left the team in a lurch at the beginning of the game with Frank Bush, their linebacker coach, being their most experienced play caller on their defensive staff. And he sort of had to step in, shortly before the game and have to call plays for really the first time since I think the 2020 season when he was the interim DC for the Jets after, whoever Adam Gase got fired and Greg Williams got promoted to the interim head coaching job, if I recall correctly. So, did that contribute to the Falcons' slow start? I certainly think it had to contribute somewhat to it. I wouldn't necessarily blame the Falcons' slow start on that, because you look at some of those early scoring drives, particularly the scoring plays. It wasn't bad play calling that led to those big scoring plays. The first touchdown, Jawan Johnson broke like 3 tackles on like a 19-yard crosser, right? Play calling ain't the reason why, Richie Grant and AJ Terrell and whoever else missed those tackles. Then you look at the second touchdown on the second drive. Play calling wasn't the reason why Richie Grant, so had a one-on-one with Shaheed on the deep post with Taysom Hill in the lineup. And Richie Grant tried to jump the throw, and the ball, he just missed it, and it resulted in a 68-yard touchdown where Shaheed was basically able to just walk into the end zone at that point. And play calling certainly isn't to blame for the lack of pressure on Andy Dalton in this game. So I think the only thing that you could probably argue that play calling and having a second string defensive coordinator factored into this game was potentially, we'll see what the film says, but if Dalton was the Falcons were playing extra vanilla in terms of their zone coverages early in the game, because it did seem like Dalton had no problem, thanks in large part due to lack of pressure, just sort of picking apart that zone coverage with the Falcons. And maybe the Falcons were being extra vanilla as Frank Bush was sort of easing into the game. You look at Dalton and Hill combined on those first 2 drives, went 5 for 7 for 135 yards with 2 touchdowns, right? And so maybe that is what you could blame. But for me, overall, I wasn't overly shocked that the Saints were successful at moving the ball against the Falcons throughout this game. I thought that's what I expected to happen, but I was, disappointed with the sort of explosive plays that the Falcons were able to give up on, those 2 scores in this game. And, we know the pass rush is not very good. They did finish with 2 sacks in this game. They got, a sack to end the third possession, so that was nice to see. They were able to later in the game in the fourth quarter force a 3 and out, on a Rashaan Evans sack. The first sack was Grady Jarrett and Lorenzo Carter splitting a sack. Carter had a good game. The edge rushers seemed to step up. Malone had a couple of plays, but you didn't have that difference maker in addition to Grady Jarrett up the middle. And it was a pretty quiet game for Arnold Ebiketie, which was a little disappointing. Thought he, wanted to see him sort of step up in this game. But like we've known the pass rush is bad. So like at this point in time, like, complaining about the Falcons' lack of pass rush, it's like, look, how long has it been? Like we're going to have to make some investments this offseason, lots of investments there. So we've known that without saying. But what was really disappointing to me in this game for the defense standpoint was the poor play on the back end, right? Both safeties and Hawkins and Grant struggled in this game, very up and down in this game. Now, Hawkins did somewhat redeem himself. He had a couple of missed tackles in this game, but he did redeem himself with a late game pass breakup on the third down to force a 3 and out to give the Falcons the ball back. Darren Hall got cooked early in this game, and it seemed like the Falcons pulled him early in this game, and you saw him and Cornell Armstrong. I don't know how much they kept it up into the second half, but it seemed like in the first half of this game, they were alternating series at that cornerback spot opposite AJ Terrell. And, one of the things I was hoping to see the Falcons do, but we didn't really talk about it coming out of bye because there was no indication that this was what they were going to do. But one of the things I was hoping to see was part of their self-evaluation, given how much Darren Hall has struggled the last couple of games going into the bye week and seemingly struggling coming out of the bye week, is that the Falcons would, self-evaluate and realize, okay, our 3 best corners are AJ Terrell, Isaiah Oliver, and D. Alford. We need to get those 3 guys on the field as much as possible. So I'm hoping after today's performance of seeing Hall and Armstrong do, little to nothing in this game, that we're going to see that change made next week against the Ravens. Can we see D. Alford play on the outside? I mean, come on, man. Like he had a nice pass breakup in this game playing in the slot, but let's see what this guy can do on the outside. That's where he played in Canada. Let's see what he can do. I'm tired of him just being a slot corner at this point. We know he can do that fine, but let's see if he has anything to bring to the table as an outside corner. So, Darren Hall, hey man, I was rooting for you, but like you ain't been it. Okay. So, that's what we'll say about the defense. Again, very rocky start. Doesn't help your rookie quarterback fall into a 14-0 hole. And I think that was a contributing factor to maybe some of the questionable play calling in this game, where you saw Arthur Smith being a little bit too aggressive in this game early on, asking Ridder to throw the ball probably a little bit more than I think a lot of people expected him. And we'll talk about Arthur Smith's play calling and where my gripes come in. Not so much early in the game, but late in the game, I thought we had another instances of Arthur Smith questionable game management late in the game. So we'll get into that as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons, guys. But before we get there, I want to tell you about Prize Picks, a fun new way to play daily fantasy. All you got to do is pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you will win up to 10 times your money. If you took the more on Desmond Ridder, getting over 172 yards, in this game, you did not win your money. So unfortunately, that recommendation fell well short. But the great thing about Prize Picks is it's not just you versus other people. It's just you versus the projections. And it's not just, NFL projections. You got NBA projections. When the baseball season starts up, you got MLB, you got NHL, PGA, college football, so much more. Prize Picks is safe. It's fast. It's easy. It's currently in operation in over 30 states in the U.S. and Canada. All you got to do is download the Prize Pick app or go to prizepicks.com and sign up and play daily fantasy. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That means if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100 to play with. Don't forget to use that promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. So let's talk about the play calling. And again, the summary would be it wasn't great, but I don't have as much fire or anger towards the early game stuff, which I'm sure, I think it's fair to criticize. Don't get me wrong. But I will wait till the all 22 comes out before I'm overly judgmental on that. Now, I don't look at this, Ridder's poor performance and say that's Arthur Smith poor play calling. Because again, I think a lot of the issues were some questionable decisions that Desmond Ridder made, some inaccurate throws that Desmond Ridder made, maybe a couple of times where the pocket presence wasn't great. So again, those are things that I'll be looking for on the all 22. But I certainly think it's fair to criticize Arthur Smith and have some questions and do a lot of second guessing. I think it's fair to second guess some of the decisions he made early in this game and certainly late in this game. You look at the first 3 series, the Falcons were very pass heavy, right? You look at you typically script the first 15 plays. The first 3 series combined had 19 plays. So they had 12 passes and 7 called runs on those 19 plays, not, including some of the plays that were nullified by penalties and whatnot. And one of the things that Arthur Smith commented on in his post-game press conference was the notion that Desmond Ridder was a little amped up on those first couple of series. And that was a knock on Desmond Ridder coming out of college. We noted that when we evaluated him, that there was a couple of games where he would come out in those first couple of series and be a little scattershot and be a little amped up and, some of that adrenaline running. And, you hear Arthur Smith talk after the game and you hear Desmond Ridder's post-game press conference after the game. And it did seem like Ridder was very critical of himself coming out and feeling like he was a little bit amped up, trying to be too perfect with some of those early game throws. So that will be something that they'll have to work on, but you certainly could argue that Arthur Smith could have done a lot more to give Desmond Ridder some, high percentage throws, right? His first completion, came on his 5th official pass of the game on a tight end screen to Michael Pruitt. And you wonder, okay, why couldn't you have done that on the first play of the game, right? Why couldn't we have seen that Drake London screen that a lot of people were sort of, speculating about being potentially, we did see that shot down the field. I think we talked about it on the podcast, but it was like, there was a part of you that wanted to see them take a shot down the field, partially as an FU to Marcus Mariota, but because, we wanted to have that mirror of what Matt Ryan was able to do on the first play. And obviously that did not come to fruition. But for me, a lot of my criticisms for Arthur Smith in the play calling was more late game stuff. And this was an issue that sprung up in that Washington game where the Falcons were probably throwing the ball a little bit too much late in the game and not really managing the clock, especially. And I thought that was something that kind of reared its ugly head on that final drive for the Falcons as well in this game. Obviously they were able to, the throwing was effective because, again, going back to that 4th down play, that was a pass play. He did hit London. And the reason why that play failed was not because it was a bad play call or anything like that. Just London didn't hang on to the football. But I wanted to see this team be a lot more methodical late in the game. Look, we know the defense has made plays at times to help them win games, but I would never trust this defense, to go out there and get a stop had the Falcons taken the go-ahead score or tied the game at that point. And so when you get the ball back with 6 minutes left in the game, run the football. Let's bleed the clock down. Let's bleed it down to the point that Younghoe Koo has to kick a game-tying field goal with time expiring to send it in overtime or, we score that touchdown in the closing seconds of the game and don't give the Saints the ball back. Again, that was, to me, the issue with the questionable play calling with Arthur Smith in that Washington game. This has been an issue that's reared its ugly head multiple times now with some questionable game management late in games, particularly with that time management and some questionable play calling. So most of my criticism for Arthur Smith's play calling is more late game stuff. Run the ball more in those situations. Certainly, I think it's more than fair for anybody to say they should have ran the ball more early in the game. Absolutely, I think that's fair. But I do think, part of that is, maybe they came out a little bit more aggressive than they initially planned on those first two drives, because they found themselves in a 14-0 hole. And so that wasn't helping matters. So we'll never know unless Arthur Smith basically comes out and says, yeah, our game plan was completely different. We had to throw it out, after that, which I don't think he's going to do. I think there's other areas where you can criticize, the Felipe Franks Wildcat stuff is like, really, that's what you're going to bust out? That's what you've been working on in the bye week? It's never worked. It didn't work today. They ran a couple of those plays. They ran a reverse pass off of Felipe Franks Wildcat where he handed the ball off to Patterson and Patterson flipped it back to Ridder. I certainly think, people will criticize that play call. I think it's fair to criticize that play call, but really the problem with that play call was Ridder holding onto the ball too much. He was trying to make a play. And again, that to me is kind of the story of this game, where Ridder was making some rookie mistakes and not showing that sort of, maturity and advancement with the decision-making that we were hoping to see in this game. So I don't have as much beef with that play call as maybe some other people have. So as I said, again, I think it's more than fair to be critical of Smith's play calling. If other people want to, put more of it on Smith and questionable play calls, like, be my guest. For me, that's more nitpicky, but I certainly think it's more than fair to second guess a lot of the stuff that he was doing in this game. So that's really it, guys. Again, we'll have more to talk about Desmond Ridder when we get a second pass of the film later this week. We're going to have Mark Schofield of SB Nation to come on and give his thoughts not only on Ridder, but we'll probably talk a little bit about next year's quarterback class, especially that conversation becomes a little bit more pertinent given we did not get the sort of breakout, savior type of performance from Desmond Ridder in this game. But this loss pretty much ends the Falcons' playoff chances. We talked about this briefly on Friday with Jarvis Davis, but basically now losing this game to the Saints, it will be impossible for them to win a tiebreaker in the NFC South against Carolina and Tampa Bay. And so basically the only chance the Falcons have making the playoffs really is hoping that the Falcons now run the table and go 3-0 to close out this year and go 8-9 this year. And then hope that both Tampa Bay and Carolina fail to get to 8 wins, right? Finish 7-10. Now, the Bucks, I'm looking over at the TV screen, and the Bucks have blown their 17-3 lead over the Bengals late in the third quarter as I'm recording this. So it looks like the Bucks may wind up losing that game. So it's not completely dead. Mathematically, they're not eliminated, but basically you're hoping that the Bucks don't win, more than one game the rest of the season, which could happen given how the Bucks have performed this year. But probably is not going to happen at this point in time. So we'll see. But, I think really the rest of the season is less about the playoffs and more about sort of, how does Ridder respond? How does Ridder grow from this point on in this 4-game audition? Game 1 was not particularly promising. I think there were some positives that you can build off of, but certainly a lot of improvement needs to be made before we're getting to a level where we can sit here and say, yeah, you know what? Ridder was just as good as Marcus Mariota. I will happily admit that, guys, that, this game would probably be as bad as the worst Mariota game that we've seen from him this season. Now, again, it's all relative. Mariota has like 75 to 80 career starts going into those poor performances, while Ridder had none. So, you do cut him a lot more slack because of that. But certainly the hope that Desmond Ridder would be an immediate upgrade over Marcus Mariota did not come to fruition in this game. But, you're hoping that in the future performances, you will see more and better from Desmond Ridder, but you're also hoping that you're going to have your defense not, fall into these 14-0 holes 7 minutes into the game. You're also hoping that we're not going to be talking about Arthur Smith's questionable play calling and game management stuff anymore. Hopefully that's, a non-issue moving forward. But we'll just sort of have to see on that, guy. So there's more to come on this game. I believe Wednesday and Tuesday evening will be when Mark Schofield comes on the pod. So tomorrow we'll probably, take a look at the television copy and talk a little bit more about Desmond Ridder in that regard before we get into the all 22 later this week, guys. But that will do it for us here on today's Rapid Reaction. Obviously, my energy is not where I would like it to be. I'm just, disappointed with today's game, that we're not sitting here, talking about how incredible Desmond Ridder is. So that will do it, guys. We'll give this game a second pass on tomorrow's episode. Really appreciate you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen. Check out Locked On Sports today as your second listen to get the lowdown on all of sports in under 25 minutes, or Locked On Sports Atlanta to get the local scoop on all the local teams. Locked On Hawks, Locked On Braves, Locked On Bulldogs. Braves, some changes to the Braves roster happened over the weekend, so check that out. Obviously, the Bulldogs are, on their path to a national title, and the Hawks are doing stuff. Last time I checked, the Hawks weren't doing so much better than Falcons, but hey, I don't know who's the bigger disappointment in the city of Atlanta. Check it out on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Maybe they have an answer for that. So guys, really appreciate it. Till then.